What's up, guys? I'm JacobTSuggs and welcome back to another video. I hope you enjoyed those 2 April Fool's Day videos that I put out, but that's just one side of my content where it's just really dumb. In fact, actually, now thinking about it, all of my content's kind of dumb, so it just kind of fit with the rest of my videos. But I'm back today to talk about something that I think is pretty interesting, but it's no secret that the latest DC Comics movies, or the DC Extended Universe, or the DCEU, whatever they're calling it now, is the subject of much controversy, as some people love the films and other people just absolutely loathe these movies. But perhaps the most polarizing film in the entire series is actually the latest and arguably the most important one, Justice League. Because director Zack Snyder had to step down from the film due to extremely personal reasons, which I don't want to get into here, Joss Whedon, who was the director of the first 2 Avengers movies, was brought in to finish the movie. However, this resulted in the final production and the final film being released to the public, essentially being a quote-unquote Frankenstein's monster type of a movie, with the reshoots and rewrites done by Whedon being extremely present. When Joss Whedon is just Joss Whedon and the studio allows him to do whatever he wants to do, he's usually pretty great. I mean, look at Firefly, Serenity, and the Avengers movies. However, my biggest fear whenever this was announced by Warner Brothers was, okay, you're bringing in Joss Whedon and that's great, but he's known for more lighthearted and fun stuff, and Zack Snyder's aiming for a darker, more gritty reality for these DC movies, so how exactly is this gonna work out perfectly? In short, it didn't work out perfectly. Now, personally, I like the film, but it did leave a lot to be desired. I mean, it's definitely not a perfect movie, but I've already reviewed Justice League and given my stance on the other DCEU movies and other videos before, and on Twitter, where you can follow me down in the description below, and that's not really what I want to discuss today. Ultimately, this isn't the first time that a Justice League movie has been talked about or put into production, for that matter, at Warner Brothers. In fact, back in 2006, director George Miller of Mad Max fame was set to direct the team's first cinematic outing, titled Justice League Mortal. So why talk about this now? Well, with Justice League recently being released on Blu-ray and DVD and digital, and more behind-the-scenes looks at this Justice League film that never was still being released, I kid you not, 12 years later, I figured that it was still worth talking about. Now, I know that other people have discussed this before, but since I'm really interested in mysterious movies, I thought it'd make an interesting discussion and would kind of fit in line with what I want to go with this channel. What I want to do with this channel. I cannot talk today for some reason. Maybe it's these DC Comics movies, maybe it's the angry fanboys on Twitter, I don't really know, but let's talk about a Justice League movie that never was. Essentially, George Miller's Justice League film would be a love letter to the team's comic-based history. Now, the film went into production around 2006 and actually was slated for a 2009 release date. And pretty much the entire cast was ready to go for this film, with Armie Hammer slated to play Batman, Megan Gale as Wonder Woman, Adam Brody as The Flash, Common as Green Lantern, Santiago Cabrera as Aquaman, and DJ Cortana as Superman. However, the film was also going to feature Martian Manhunter, who most people knew from the animated series that was coming out around the same time, and he was going to be portrayed by, and I'm going to say this wrong, so I apologize in advance, Hugh Keays-Byrne? Byron? Point is, Martian Manhunter was going to be in this movie. So the entire film was cast, and for the most part, production in 2006 and 2007 went, honestly, pretty smoothly, with Warner Brothers slating the film for release and being fairly confident in how the film was going along in production. Now, although we previously had a photo of Megan Gale as Wonder Woman, more recently a blurry production photo of the entire cast I just listed in costume was released online. And to be honest, it looks like something straight out of the early 2000s, and that's kind of a good thing and a bad thing, so it's sort of a double-edged sword here. Batman looks like he has a suit completely made out of leather, which feels like a complete step back when you look at Christian Bale's costume from The Dark Knight and Batman Begins, and the Dark Knight trilogy was still coming out while this film was in production, so keep that in mind. However, in an interview for the 2013 film The Lone Ranger, Armie Hammer had this to say regarding the Batsuit in that film, so apparently it might have been cooler than what we're seeing here in the concept art and stuff like that, and I'll share some of the concept art later, but here's the interview and what Armie Hammer had to say.
And I know you came very close to playing Batman at one point.
Yeah.
I saw some of the Weta suits for that.
You did?
That was a crazy.
Where'd you see him?
A friend at Weta, and it was fascinating because they
badass,
really went very different than anything. While this is very traditional.
Did you see the bat suit?
I saw the bat suit and I saw the
see
Superman suit
with all the carbon fiber and all the mechanics and springs and pistons on it.
That's what seemed like it was really Miller wasn't afraid to shake up what people know about those characters.
Well, what we did was we got down there and George Miller was basically like, we're going to push these DC people farther than they are ever going to be comfortable with. And then the DC people showed up and looked around and they were like, this is farther than we're comfortable with, but we love it and you can do whatever you want. And then it just went even farther. It was great, yeah.
Now, Superman, The Flash, and Aquaman look pretty great for the most part too, and at least have a pretty comic-accurate design, which Superman's suit reminds me a lot of the Kingdom Come design for the character, and in fact, this incarnation of the entire Justice League looks straight out of an Alex Ross illustration, which I think is pretty cool, partially because I'm a fan of Alex Ross. However, although Wonder Woman looks good for the most part, the blue skirt just feels out of place, and Green Lantern looks really bizarre, and is a great example of a comic suit that doesn't necessarily translate to the screen. And although I love Martian Manhunter as a character, he doesn't really look that great here. I mean, he looks good, and maybe it's because the photo is blurry, but judging from this particular photo, Martian Manhunter just looks really fake to me. At least it's practical makeup, which I commend, and going back to Green Lantern, at least a practical suit is way better than what we got in his 2011 movie. But enough about the production and costumes so far, as you're probably wondering what the plot of Miller's film was, and if it's anything like the 2017 film. So before we talk about what ended this project, let's talk about what it could have been. The film follows the individual Justice League members eventually deciding to team up and form the JLA by the end of the film, due to the main villain Maxwell Lord causing trouble. But the main difference between this film and Snyder's film is that the members of the Justice League are more experienced than they are in the DCEU, and each member has met every other member of the League before. It's not like they're meeting for the first time like in the movie that we got. And just a friendly reminder that the entire script is available to read online, and I'll be linking that down in the description below if you're curious to check it out for yourself. I'd honestly recommend it. In fact, it's actually really good. The film opens with a funeral in Metropolis, but we don't know which member of the Justice League it's for. Cut to 2 days ago, where the main storyline for the film begins. We start off by seeing Batman use Brother Eye, which is a satellite that he uses to spy on the other members of the Justice League, just in case they go rogue and he has to prevent them from, taking over the world. Kind of what we saw with the nightmare sequence in Batman v Superman. However, Alfred shows up and tells him that Bruce Wayne has a birthday party to attend, forcing Bruce to step away from watching the other heroes, although we see Brother Eye glitch out for a split second. Meanwhile, Detective John Jones, or the Martian Manhunter, is in Denver, Colorado investigating a crime scene. He finds a jar holding what looks to be a seahorse-type creature, but when he removes it from the container, it bursts into flames, causing John to catch on fire and fly away in a panicked state. Side note, in case you didn't know, Martian Manhunter's family was burned to death, so fire is a traumatic weakness for him in the comics, so it's really nice to see that translated to the screen and so quickly to where the audience could just kind of catch on. Barry meets up with Wonder Woman, who eventually saves Martian Manhunter. Now, back at Wayne Manor, Bruce meets up with Maxwell Lord for the first time, and it's revealed that he's the owner of the Planet Krypton restaurant chain, and he basically just discusses with Bruce Wayne how Ra's al Ghul was defeated by Batman and Talia, but this is all cut short due to Bruce finding out what's going on in Denver and decides to catch up with the other members of the Justice League. After everybody meets up with Manhunter, Barry returns home to find out that his nephew, Wally West, is in town. Now, Wally can also tap into the Speed Force, so Barry asks Wally to aid him in researching what could have harmed Martian Manhunter to begin with. Now we cut to Superman, who we see for the first time, meeting with Aquaman in Atlantis to discuss the matter. However, Aquaman refuses to turn back to the surface due to humanity's disrespect for the ocean and polluting it and oil spills and stuff like that, which was relevant at the time that this film was in production, so it's really cool seeing real-life issues being translated and put into a script for a Justice League movie. I love combining real-world stuff with comic book movies and fictional material if it's done right, and this is an example, at least I think, as to how you do it really well. Oh, and not to mention that Aquaman now has a metal hand as a prosthetic, and eventually Aquaman does agree to go with Superman reluctantly. Now, apparently, Aquaman does mainly do this to see Wonder Woman again, so apparently Aquaman and Wonder Woman are a thing in this movie, which I don't really get, but I'll roll with it, whatever. Not long after this, we find out who is behind the attack. Both Talia al Ghul and Maxwell Lord are responsible, both of which were previously shown at the Wayne Manor event. I should also probably mention that by this point in time, it's established in the film that Earth is virtually free from war, thanks to these individual heroes basically sorting everything out and creating world peace. Now, I don't have time to say everything, so I'm gonna quickly sum up the rest of the story. It's revealed that Talia had an affair with Bruce Wayne, and was able to sneak a device into his clothing a long time ago, allowing her to access Batman's tech for years and years, including Brother Eye. Of course, Batman also has files on how to exterminate the other members of the Justice League, resulting in Superman and the other members of the League being extremely frustrated with Batman for keeping this information, as they should be. However, the team ultimately decides to come together in order to defeat this threat once and for all, as there's bigger fish to fry. Now, a giant battle between Maxwell Lord takes place where he sends OMAC droids to attack the League. However, there are innocent civilians inside of the droids, which creates a difficulty in attempting to stop them. Now, I'm just gonna be honest. To me, this is one of the cooler elements of this entire script, and I think that it adds a lot more intensity to the final battle. I mean, it would have been so easy to just have the Justice League fight one main antagonist and an army of emotionless drones, but that's not what George Miller wanted to do. In fact, in numerous interviews with the cast and crew for this film that never was, they said that they wanted to push these DC characters and the DC universe in a way that it had never been pushed before. They were going to do things that blew everybody's mind, and I think that Armie Hammer actually said that in the interview that I showed earlier. I mean, even Maxwell Lord uses his psychic abilities to take control over Superman, so we even see an antagonistic Superman in the fight, which is something that we kind of saw in the 2017 film as well, but not for very long. I was more distracted by the lack of mustache. Now, in order to win the fight, the Flash decides to merge himself and Maxwell Lord with the Speed Force, eventually causing both of them to cease from existing. So, yeah, the funeral at the start of this film was for Barry Allen, and now Wally West has taken up the mantle as the Flash. Which makes sense because Wally West is in the Flash universe and stuff like that in the comics, so it would make sense seeing him become the Flash in this universe. This entire script feels like something from the classic TV show that I grew up with, and I honestly think it could have been awesome. Reading the script and researching it online, Justice League Mortal sounds like a longtime DC fan's dream come true, or at least to me it does. In fact, there's a ton of amazing concept art out there for this movie, and the entire look of the film seems to be based on the comic books that inspired it in the first place. If you do want to see all of the concept art, I'm going to link that down in the description down below, so you can check it out there in like all of its glory. It's honestly fantastic. But it was still never made, and it wasn't until 12 years later that fans were finally able to see the Justice League's first cinematic outing. So what exactly killed and halted the production for Justice League Mortal? Well, there's honestly a few things, with Warner Brothers calling a hold on Justice League Mortal in early 2008, citing that the script needed a little bit more fine-tuning, which, if we all know Warner Brothers, they really love messing with scripts, am I right? However, this was nearly impossible due to the writer's strike going on at the time, which just created more difficulty. Now, in February 2008, production moved to Canada, despite George Miller wanting to keep production at Fox Studios in Australia. A 2009 release date was still desired, and hopefully filming would begin in the middle of 2008. However, it wasn't long after all this that the film was put on an indefinite hold, and production was halted entirely. honestly. It honestly reminds me a lot of Superman Lives, the Tim Burton directed Superman film that was slated to come out in the 1990s but was canceled last minute. And also Nicolas Cage was supposed to play Superman in that movie, but that's all beside the point. I'm just saying that the situation sounds really similar. Also, there's no denying that this film would have had a huge budget, but considering that this was way before The Avengers was released or even being considered, this would have possibly been the biggest superhero movie ever made, and I'm sure it would have turned a profit. Granted, that's what we thought about last year's Justice League movie, and it barely broke even, which is still baffling to me in several ways. Also, Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy was still going on, so WB thought that having two actors playing the same character on screen might be a little bit confusing for your average moviegoer, but considering that we're now living in a world where characters like The Flash and Superman have two actors playing them in different forms of media, I also don't think it would have been that bad of a problem. I mean, it's pretty distinguishable from a comic book world to a gritty reality world that Christopher Nolan was going for, and because the themes and tones of both movies seem really different, I feel like it would have been easily distinguishable for Batman. The cancellation of this film is disappointing, sure, but at least we have a ton of cast photos and storyboards and even the entire script for the film. And from what everyone says online, this film would have been amazing, and frankly, I don't doubt it. Justice League Immortal sounds like it had a ton of potential, but unfortunately, it just never really got off the ground. And you're not the only one that's disappointed about this film. In fact, actor Armie Hammer has been most vocal about this film and has had nothing but extremely positive things to say regarding the experience that he had during the production of that movie. It's really a shame because looking at the Justice League movie that we got, that was like a Frankenstein's monster of two different directors, it's really sad seeing that Miller had this really clear vision as to what he wanted to do. Warner Brothers ditched it for several reasons, some good and some bad. However, Zack Snyder also had a vision for his Justice League movie, and it also was kind of scrapped. I mean, I'm extremely disappointed too, but hey, at least we have a look at this movie. Some movies that are never released literally hide everything from its production, but with Justice League Immortal, we actually have a pretty good look at what this movie could have been with the concept art and the photos, and the fact that we're still getting stuff from this movie that never was 12 years later is just insane to me. So who knows, maybe they filmed stuff that we didn't know that they filmed, and maybe more stuff will be released in the future, but as of now, that's pretty much all we've got. That being said, do you think Justice League Immortal would have been good or bad? Let me know your thoughts on this mysterious movie down in the comments below. And as always, I'm Frame by Frame. Remember the name, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Dostoevsky.